Hello, my name is Dustin Taylor. I'm from Collinsville High School, and I am proud to represent Thespian Troop 643. This is my presentation on costume design for Night of the Living Dead by John F. Carroll, based on the horror classic by George A. Romero. The play takes place in a rundown farmhouse just outside of Evans City, Pennsylvania. On Sunday, April 29th, 1968, amid a mass outbreak causing reanimated corpses to attack and devour the living, introducing our world to the concept of zombies. My director wanted to show the community something new while telling a familiar tale that would draw the eye of curious audience members. Throughout the process of costuming this show, I wanted to convey the varying styles of the 1960s while staying true to the source material from the movie and allowing for the necessary choreography within the show. I felt the costuming in the show had to convey the hopelessness and collapse in society while still displaying the cheery and bold colors that covered the 60s fashion. I chose to stay away from dresses to display both the progression in fashion of the time and accommodate for the high intensity movement during choreography. The 1960s were a fashion renaissance with bold colors and patterns that broke away from the traditional styles of the past. The fashion styles of the 60s were influenced by the youth of the day, who embraced self expression and individuality. Some of the key fashion styles of the decade included mod, beatnik, and hippie looks, all of which captured the artful, fun, and free spirit of the time. My research consisted of both men's and women's fashion throughout the entirety of the decade, as well as paying homage to the source material in the movie, which is very well acclaimed as a developmental key to the horror genre. The play just depicts characters with varying ages, so I made sure that every character would have an individual silhouette to visually demonstrate the different reactions to the traumatic events within the script. I felt it was important to illustrate the differences between each character and force them to stand out amongst their scene partners in an isolated settings. Because the show required the use of about a gallon of fake blood per night, the costumes needed to stray away from colors and fabrics that would not work well with the splatters, gashes, and wounds, such as reds and darker tone colors, as well as easily stained or hard to wash materials. Luckily, the 60s style uses an abundance of bold colors and fabrics where blood would both come out and be visible when needed. The script called for costumes that could withstand choreography, such as grappling, tackles, and intense body movement. Costumes had to be equally as durable while still protecting the individual look of the character, following the way they lived their life before the outbreak. These differences can be shown in the costume plot. The costume plot for the show is straightforward. As the show takes place throughout one night, the costume changes were restricted to actors who turned into ghouls off stage, and or were already beginning to turn. Due to the show's production taking place in the summer and the show's relationship with gore, my director and I decided it would be unwise to borrow costumes from local companies and schools. Most of the costumes in the show were repurposed from the costume closet at our school, bought with donations or from resale shops in the area, including the cosmetic dirt, blood, and supplies needed to rewash the survivor clothing. After the runtime of the show, the total amount spent for the show and costumes ended up being around $225. Immersing the audience into the apocalyptic-like caricature of the 1960s was the primary goal of the creative teams working on the show. The students running each creative aspect of the production worked closely with each other to create overall cohesive look to the story we were attempting to create, while working alongside our fight choreographer to adjust based on what was needed for the production. This included a faux radio system playing as guests entered the theater, with songs of the period and facts about the original movie, as well as our front of house crew being dressed as reporters of the time, and compromises made towards the shoe choices and more restricting costume pieces for the efficient use of the actor's body movement and choreography. Every week, I had our ensemble, or ghoul actors, which work with our ghoul coach to create a collective movement and individualize the background acting to flow with their costumes and create volume in even smaller hordes of ghouls. Here are the preliminary sketches. The first of these characters is Ben. This costume was originally sketched to be a sleek and simple design that encompasses the men's fashion of the time. The next character is Barbara, whose original sketch was inspired by the design of the original movie costume. Next is the character Helen Cooper, who is the oldest female character portrayed, and is meant to give off a more upfront, mature look. Preceding Helen is Harry Cooper, whose look was meant to be bold and strong, as well as follow that of the movie's design. Then lastly is Judy, who is sketched with a more youthful look and is described to be in her late teens. Judy is designed with a softer silhouette than the other women and is given a suede tasseled jacket to represent the free-spirited youth of the decade. Here are the final sketches. These costumes are accompanied by swatches of the fabrics intended for said pieces. For the costume of Ben, we had to make design changes due to the clothing available for use. He was dressed in yellows, highlighting his will to live and alluding to his death the next morning. Barbara is again given a merely movie-accurate costume. I chose to highlight the yellows in her costume to tie to her color scheme, to Ben, who protects her throughout the night. Helen Cooper was designed with mostly bold and warm-toned pinks and reds, to contrast with her husband, who is in blues. This is likely to be a physical representation of the break in her character's marital trust in the play. Harry Cooper goes through a massive design change, however. In my school's production of Night of the Living Dead, Harry Cooper was portrayed by someone who was female, so the costume silhouette was changed to bulk the costume and fit the physical needs of the actress. This costume is an homage to the costume given to Ben in the original movie. Due to restrictions in movement, my director and I decided it would be more effective to change Judy's jacket from a suede material into a leather jacket style. We changed the shoes to a leather-painted boot in a cream color to represent the free-spirited attitude of teenagers in the decade. Night of the Living Dead was my first show as costume director, and what a show it was. My crew worked intensely with the actors and nitpicked every detail that went into this show so we can make it the best it could possibly be. Thank you for listening to my presentation and giving your time.